Hey guys, thanks for joining me today. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Kelly, and on today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you 10 watering tips to not only make watering your veggie garden a whole lot easier, but it's also going to help keep your plants happier and healthier too. So without further ado, let's get started. Tip number 1 is to install an irrigation system with a timer. Now, honestly, I cannot recommend this enough, and I can't give it enough praise because since I have installed my irrigation system in my garden, it has been an absolute game changer and lifesaver, especially in the heat of summer. The irrigation system that I've got in my veggie garden is using a drip hose that already has the holes pre-installed every 30 centimeters, and it allows for a certain amount of water to be released per hour in each hole. In the pathways, I use 13mm poly pipe, and no water comes out of those pipes. It's simply to go across the pathways and travel from bed to bed. I also have little valves that can turn each bed on and off, so I can control which bed is getting watered at which time, depending on what I've got growing in that particular garden bed. This is the timer that I've got on my irrigation system here in my garden. The brand is Gardenia, and it is a dual system, so it operates two sides of the garden. I've got my veggie garden split into two different sides of irrigation, and honestly, this, yes, it was a little bit pricey, but definitely worth the money. It has been so handy, so easy to operate, and I would buy it again in a heartbeat. Now, if you are new to gardening and you're currently setting up your veggie garden, this is one of the first things that I highly recommend you do. After you have built your garden beds, got your soil in, then it's time to install your irrigation system, because once you have that in place, it is going to just automate your watering of your garden, and you don't have to stand out here in the heat of summer watering your plants, watering your soil for a long time when it's 40 degrees outside, because that is crazy. Tip number 2 is to keep your gardens mulched. Yes, I know that may seem a bit odd, but keeping your garden beds mulched is actually a huge contributing factor to how often you need to water your plants. So here in my garden, I do try to keep my garden beds mulched as much as I can, and the reason why I like to do that is not only does it build up the health of the soil, but it's going to stop your soil from drying out, which allows you to minimize how often you actually need to water your plants, which is pretty important. Here in my veggie garden, I like to use organic sugarcane mulch. I think it works pretty well. It's nice and fine, especially for those seedlings, but there are plenty of options for mulch in your garden. Some of them are lucerne mulch, pea mulch. Some people also like to use compost or really fine wood chips. They tend to work well as well. But the best way to know which mulch you should be using in your garden is really trial and error. So try out a few things, see what works best for you, and then you can move forward choosing the right mulch for your garden. Tip number 3 is to water your plants at the right time of day. So here in my veggie garden, I only ever water my plants either first thing in the morning or late in the afternoon or early evening. I never water my plants in the middle of the day. And doing this is going to help prevent causing burn or sun scald on the leaves or the fruits and veggies of your plants. So watering at the right time of day is going to give you more happy, healthy, better harvest with your plants. Now, another reason why it's so important to water at the right time of day is because if you're watering in the middle of the day where it's hotter, you're obviously going to have a lot more water evaporation, and there'll be less water going to your plants. So it's pretty important to know the best time of day to water your plants. Tip number 4 is to always water at the base of your plants and never on the leaves. Doing this is going to help to prevent disease like fungal diseases developing on the leaves of your plants. Also, when you water at the base of your plants, it is the most efficient way of watering your plants because you're giving your plants water directly at the root system, rather than if you were to water overhead using something like a sprinkler, there's going to be a lot more water evaporation. Tip number 5 is to know your soil type in your garden. And this is very important because different types of soil can hold onto the water for longer or a less amount of time. For For example, soils that are more heavy in clay tend to hold onto the water longer, and soils that are more heavy in sand don't tend to hold the moisture for as long. So knowing what type of soil you have in your gardens is very important to know how often you should be watering your soil, which will give you healthy plants if you get it right. So knowing the type of soil you've got in your garden is a must-have for gardeners. Tip number 6 is to track and store water that you're getting from natural sources, such as rainfall. Now, the first part of this tip to track how much rainfall you're getting in your garden is very simple and easy to do. And in my garden, I do that by using something called a rain gauge. Now, this one here only cost me a few dollars, and I'm able to measure up to 120 mils of water, which here in my area is a lot of rainfall that we would need to get to fill up this rain gauge. Now, the reason why it's so important to keep track of how much rainfall you're getting in your garden is because knowing how much water your garden has gotten from the rain allows you to choose whether you can have your irrigation system, which you should have already installed, turned on or turned off, which will help you to save water. Now, the second part to this tip is knowing how to catch and store all of that rainfall that you're hopefully getting in your veggie garden. And that also is very simple. And here in my garden, I like to do that by using wood chip mulch in the pathways. Now, the reason why I like to use wood chip mulch in the pathways is because when we do get rainfall, the wood chip mulch here catches the water and it slowly absorbs the water into the gardens on either side of the pathways. So after the rain has stopped, you still have that water stored in the pathway here. It's not a big boggy mess and it slowly gets absorbed into the gardens on either side, which is a fantastic free way to water your plants. Tip number 8 is to make sure you're watering your plants evenly, and this is pretty important to help prevent cracking in some fruits, such as tomatoes. If you're giving irregular watering to your tomatoes and it's going for periods of time without water and then suddenly gets hit with a big burst of water, there's going to be a greater chance of cracks developing in that fruit from that irregular watering. So it's really important to make sure that you're giving your plants nice, regular amounts of water. Another reason why even watering is key is because it can help to prevent a disease called blossom end rot, which is caused by irregular watering and the plant not being able to take up the correct amount of calcium it needs from the soil. So watering evenly is actually a really important thing that you need to start implementing in your garden. And there is a very easy way to make sure that your plants are getting an even amount of water, and that is through using your irrigation system with a timer. You will know that your plants are getting the same amount of water each day and therefore being happier and healthier plants. Tip number 9 is to know how much water each plant needs. And this is a very important tip because each plant that you're growing in the garden is different and they do require different watering needs. So plants like beans prefer to have a little bit less water and they actually do better for having less water as well. Then you've got different lots of plants that have deep root systems and shallow root systems. Now with the deep root systems, you've got your tomatoes and pumpkins and melons, and they have the ability to reach down and get water from deeper in the soil with their long taproots. Whereas plants like corn and lettuce, they do have a more shallow root system, so they do need more frequent watering in order for them to thrive and be healthy. Now, keeping in mind, although some plants do like less water and some like more, when you're just starting those plants out and they're little seedlings, it is a good idea to give them a bit more water just to help them get established. But once those plants are established, then that's when you can start to ease off the water a little bit, particularly with those plants that do have a bigger, deeper root system. So after hearing all of those tips, you might be wondering, but how do I know if my soil needs watering? Well, this is the lucky last tip, number 10, how to know when your soil needs water. And I'm going to show you this with a very simple and easy trick, and that is by doing the finger test. Yes, I know that might sound a little bit odd, but it is actually very simple and very quick to test if your soil needs watering. To do the finger test, you just need your index finger and you're going to find a spot preferably near the base of a plant because that's where you want it to be nice and moist. So I'm just going to stick my index finger about halfway into the soil, pull it out, and if there's minimal dirt on your finger, then that area probably needs some water. I'm going to go a little bit closer to the plant here and we'll see what that is like. See, that's a lot better closer to that plant. There's a lot more soil on my finger and I could feel the soil around the plant was nice and moist. Now, I do have drippers that are at the base of each plant, so it's obviously more moist around the base of the plant than, elsewhere in the garden bed. But that is a great way to check if your soil is nice and moist or if it does need some water. So simply sticking your finger in the soil is a great, easy way to check if your soil is moist or if it's a little bit dry and needs some water. Such a simple, easy test, although you will have to get your hands dirty. Well, I hope these 10 watering tips were really helpful for you in your gardens. And if they were helpful and you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give this video a big like, share it around, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well if you haven't already. We are very close to 1,000 subscribers, and my goal really is to reach as many people as I can to try and encourage people to start growing their own food, so we can be less reliant on the supermarkets, because the more people that can grow their own food, the better the world is going to be. Well, I really hope that this video was helpful for you today. If you have any questions or comments, please don't forget to write them down below, as I will always read your comments and get back to you as well. I hope you all can get out into your gardens today. It's a bit hot now, so I'm going to head inside, but I really appreciate you joining me today, and I will see you all on the next one. See ya!